Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. We're back again and we're talking about glass ceilings. Are you under one? Are you trying to get through one? Do you know what one is? Let's talk about glass ceilings.
Let's start there. So the traditional definition of a glass ceiling is a cap that it really was born out of the corporate world, a cap of that usually discriminated against minorities or women, where you could only get to a certain level where other people, aka white males, could exceed that level. And so essentially that's where the glass ceiling, I don't even know who coined it. Do you know who coined it?
I don't. I probably should have looked that up, but
probably should.
I do not know. But it's basically just a systemic, unspoken obstacles, just this rooted in bias, stereotypes, gender, institutional practices, and it sort of defines your progression of your career. And as Lynn said, it was more corporate. I think a lot of people associate it with the corporate world more than anything else.
Yeah, but it really has become a phrase used across all industries. And we talk a lot about it in entrepreneurship because we face our own glass ceilings, not just in the systemic shit that's happening in our countries or globally, but also in our own selves. We put these limits and these beliefs on ourselves where we just kind of keep hitting that ceiling and can't. It's and the whole idea is glass. You can see the other side. You want to be there, but energetically, sometimes unconsciously, you just are hitting the ceiling.
I think it's often just a subtle manifestation. I think that you've taken into account workplace culture and the attitudes and your own personal decision-making processes, and you've capped yourself. You've told yourself, this is as far as I can go. This is the rule. This is as far as I can go. This is as far as society's going to let me go. And it's kind of bullshit. It's not really, there are so many ways to break through the glass ceiling. A hammer, with your head, there's lots of ways, metaphorically speaking. But I think a lot of it, as you said, is sort of self-imposed. It's not really even a limitation that truly exists currently. Obviously we're not talking 1967 or anything, but current glass ceiling standards, I think a lot of them manifest through your own decision-making processes, through your own psyche and what you feel is allowed.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say more so than what it was, because there is still funding disparity. There is still lack of recognition or certain kind of gatekeeping. The good old boys club is still a thing. I think it will always be a thing. And so you definitely have that as well. But yeah, in the entrepreneur world where we see it, the internal stuff, the manifestation, but, access to certain networks or resources or mentorships. Yeah. If you push yourself, you can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you can cross that barrier. So it does start within. I think another glass ceiling, and this is definitely more internal than it is external, is constantly feeling like we have to prove our legitimacy or our worth. And that can be for many different reasons. We might be feeling underestimated by our clients or by other people. And, it's interesting, when we were getting ready to do this of a few situations. But owning a security company in Hawaii as a woman, like I face a lot of different kind of judgments and things that I ended up, there was a community, we'll say, glass ceiling that was almost placed upon me, but I didn't pay as much attention to that as I did, or allow that to affect me as much as I did the one that I started putting on myself. The community one actually pushed me, but I'm that person. Don't tell me I can't. But I can remember how it was like manifesting, especially in, the dynamic of the Hawaii culture as well, being a woman owning that type of business. It's just kind of wild.
Oh yeah. I mean, the businesses I owned in Hawaii, many of them were very female centric. And so nobody was like, oh, but I still felt it. I still felt this weird. Again, it was more self-imposed, I think, and perhaps imposed by some of the people I was hanging out with at the time, that like there's this gap, that there's like, this is only so far you can go. And there's this narrative around it was, okay, well, that's a good job to have until you have kids or until you get married, or, how long can you possibly do this? How long can you possibly keep working for yourself? Because eventually you're going to have to get married and have kids. And there's nothing wrong with those things. I'm not saying that getting married and having children is a bad thing, but it was definitely like, nobody ever had that conversation with any male counterparts that I encountered. Like, oh, well, it's good for you to have a job now, but what are you going to do when you get married and have kids? Like, it's a completely different conversation, which I know isn't 100% around glass ceiling. However, it can be ingrained in you that those conversations, you're hanging around people who have those feelings about you and they're constantly bringing it up. It can start to feel like that is your cap. Like, okay, well, how can I work around the potential of having marriage and kids on the table? Like, how can I navigate that world knowing that that's my cap? Like, my business can only go so far because this is what society is telling me that I can do. And I don't want to blame society, like, oh, it's society's at fault for the way you feel and think and do. And there is something to be said about that. And I think the glass ceiling is that same idea, that there is a bit of a discrimination there. I mean, there's still a pay gap, there's still discrimination, and there's still rules about implementing diversity and inclusive environments and promoting transparency and hiring processes. And and it could swing the opposite way as well, though, because I think we're in this place where if you're not swinging one way, you're swinging the other. If you're not completely crazy in this aspect, you have to be completely crazy in that aspect. So I think it's really changed the way we've talked about it just in the last 20 years, let's say. It's just the narrative around it has become much more psycho in a lot of ways, because it's crazy on both ends. Like, there's like no solution that people are really presenting. It's just crazy antics on both sides.
Yeah. Okay. So a few ways that having a glass ceiling on yourself can kind of manifest, or some things that you might be doing that you might not know that you're like hitting your head against a glass ceiling, is the imposter syndrome. A lot of times imposter syndrome, yes, it's a self-worth thing, but that is a glass ceiling. You're putting a cap on your ability to accomplish financially, marker wise, whatever. So that whole, do I belong in this space, that imposter syndrome. The other one too is struggling with charging what you're worth, because you feel like you see other people charging this amount or getting this amount or whatever, and you're having a hard time to scaling your business and charging what you're worth. A lot of times I feel like people who place a lot of glass ceilings on themselves end up exhausting themselves more, because they're trying to push without dealing with the glass ceiling. So they just keep like banging their head against it. And it kind of goes with a podcast that we just recorded about doing different in order to get different. But if you don't recognize that glass ceiling is there, then you're constantly trying to do more to get more results, but with less whatever you need, because you're not allowing yourself to have that more, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really difficult for a lot of people to break through. I mean, because a lot of times this is generational change. It's diversifying entire industries. It's not just, there was a time where the only job you could have as a woman was a secretary or a nurse. Like those are your choices. Those are your two choices. You can do those things. And so it's changed so much, like exponentially over the last, like I said, even 50 years, if you want to go from that perspective. It's changed so much, but it doesn't change the feelings that people have around it and the ways they hold themselves down. And imposter syndrome, like you said, is one of the smallest, easiest, biggest at the same time ways that people hold themselves back. And then also the competitive analysis of everything, like, comparing yourself, your valley to somebody else's peak, and all these things that come up, when really what we should be doing to help break the glass ceiling is like leading by example and advocating for others and collaborating rather than being competitive, and mentoring others, because ultimately that's going to help people navigate the systemic changes and really identify what they need to be doing differently, as we said, do differently in order to see the changes that they're looking for. If you want to champion diversity, or you want to address inequities in funding or access to certain things or visibility, then you've got to be the change you want to see. You can't expect it just to magically trickle down and then wait 50 years for it to happen. It's got to be you.
Well, I think that that's a really good point too that I want to bring up. And, I know this is going to be a bit more touchy in the US, is that you can sit and complain about all the shit that isn't, all the glass ceilings that are around you placed upon you or you've placed upon yourself. But at the end of the day, there have been other people before you who have figured it the fuck out and have done differently. So you can sit in the space of the complaining and the showing of the glass ceiling that has been placed by everybody around you, but you don't have to buy in. Like, you do not have to buy into it. And yes, I'm not saying, be the ostrich with your head in the sand. That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, okay, then pave differently, do something different. I just recently, besides the Badasserie, I act as a fractional CEO for companies, and I'm working with one particularly now, and we are a global company based out of Singapore. My partners are not Singaporean, they're Israeli, and we are dealing with an Indian company with one of our potential products. And I had to let my partners know, I said, listen, like, in order to make better strides, I'm going to need you to lead more of the conversation, or when I'm leading, to back me up, because I know that there's a glass ceiling there, because they're going to look at me differently than they look at you, especially as an Israeli man. They put them on a different pedestal, and it's facts. I could complain, I could be bitchy about it, I could be a complete jerk. Instead, I'm educated. I know what's going to happen. It doesn't diminish my value in the company. It makes me a smart player to get what we want. And that is to move the conversation along. Now, there's other complexities to that as well, but I'm not allowing that glass ceiling that is placed upon me by their own societal kind of caste system and different things of that. It's not for me to change the way that they think. It's for me to get us business and to do business together. And so it's kind of wild. So you do not have to buy into the narrative. That is on you. I'm not saying don't be truthful that it's there. Don't be, positive Polly here and act like nothing's going on, but be educated, do what you need to do in order to move forward. It didn't make me less of a woman. In fact, I feel like it made me more of a leader to be able to say, listen, guys, this is what we need. This is how we're going to do it. And I can tell you what, that the company, the Indian company, actually respected me more because I did that. Because if I would have went in there and bulldozed, they would have looked at me differently. And so it wouldn't have got our company as far.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important distinction because as somebody who can often be a bull in a china shop and who has dealt and who has done it poorly. So I was in a situation similar, not exactly similar, but I was in a situation where I was the one woman in a group full of men who had a very specific hierarchy in mind, and that my job was not to be there. And I pushed really, really hard because I was the strong woman and I was going to be the change. And actually, I backtracked us because I sat so high in that I'm going to stand for what's right. And you're going to listen to me whether you want to or not, that it derailed the project a little bit. So sometimes, and I know a lot of people are really mad at this conversation because, and I would have been too, if you asked me this, if you had played this podcast for me 10 years ago, be like, what a cop out.
10 years
you
ago?
didn't push.
Just
okay,
kidding.
20 years ago.
No. The other one.
Last month. But if you, I would have said like, what a cop out. Like you denied who you are as a woman and you let them take advantage of you and you furthered that narrative that women can't do it. And it would have really, really, and I still struggle with it. I'm not saying, because Lynn's right. I still, to this day, I would struggle with that conversation, but it doesn't mean that I wouldn't get the business done. But sometimes you have to choose your battles. Like what's that hill you're going to die on? Is it that you're going to make this huge stand, or are you going to sneak in the back door and, rule a different way? Sometimes you have to know when to push and when to like wait it out and how to approach those situations, because it can't always be bull in a china shop. I'm going to break the ceiling because there's a lot of shards that could hit everybody else around you. Sometimes it has to be that you're going to meticulously, slowly, ninja-like cut through the glass in one little corner, one little perfect circle, and then weasel your way in. There's more than one way to break a glass ceiling.
Yes. And I think it's about being strategic and understanding what the bigger purpose is. It's not about weaseling, and it's not about like, and you were saying it earlier, it's, I don't even think it's about picking your own battle. It's like, what is the purpose of, for example, this particular conversation? It wasn't for me to teach them about my idea of, the hierarchy of people, because they have their own beliefs and their own systemic beliefs. Not saying that I agree with it, but I know what I'm working with and what is the objective of, right? It's not to stand on a pedestal. It is to do business with them and to be smart about it. And I know we're just using this one particular example. And so, and I get what you're saying too, because I know you well. And so I know the conversation, I know what you mean by all this, but I definitely have to make a distinction. It is, first of all, to get back on topic, the glass ceilings, there are some that are placed upon us, but we place a lot more upon ourselves. And it is our choice how we navigate those glass ceilings in order to have progress. Because if we want progress, we will have to navigate different glass ceilings. And I think that, obviously the ones that are a bit more obvious tend to be the ones that are external, but also we have to deal with our own internal glass ceilings. And to me, going back to that conversation, that soapbox that both of us were just on, is if we feel like we want to correct them in their mannerisms or in their beliefs, that's a glass ceiling within ourselves, because then we're limiting ourselves to say, what is the bigger purpose of this? Is it for me to educate them on their beliefs and their own cultural nuance, in this particular case, cultural nuances, etc., or is it to get business done? And the fact is, it's to get business done. So just be mindful of where our own glass ceilings are and how you're navigating them, because there are people who've done it before you. So if you continue to allow that glass ceiling to affect you and you complain about it and this and that, then it's only allowing you to go so far, if even past the glass ceilings that you're bitching about.
100%. And it really comes down to, again, it's, Lynn says it better than I do because I get all fired up about it. But ultimately, it's about what are you pushing against? Are you pushing against yourself or are you pushing against that other person? Because a lot of times, like you said, with the glass ceiling, it is your shit to deal with. It's your thing. It's on you to let go of that side of yourself and that ceiling that's holding you back. It's not necessarily this outward something that you need to push against, because when it comes down to Lynn's example, she got it done. She could have pushed on that and then lost the deal and then lost the opportunity to show them that there was a different way. And then again, it's the strategy behind it, not just fighting for the sake of the fight that is inside you. Nobody else is fighting. It's just you fighting against yourself. So letting go of some of that pride and
ego
and your own.
And I think sometimes too, like your own ignorance. Sorry, I hate to say it, but, and I'm not calling you ignorant. I'm just saying in general.
You can call me ignorant.
No,
it's fine.
No, but I'm saying like sometimes we, like going back to that particular thing, like, you know, everybody's made differently. And when we think that our way is the only way, and this is why I said, you know, the Americans especially are going to have a harder time with this, and maybe other countries, because ours are absolutes. We're superior. We're this, we're that, and people should be doing things the way we do it. No, they shouldn't. Get off your fucking high horse. Everybody in culturally in different regions of the world and et cetera, like it's our own ignorance and naiveness of understanding how the whole world works versus just our little world. And so just be mindful of that. Yeah. Anywho.
There's more than one way.
I'm sure we're going to get some comments on this one, and I bring them. Bring them. Yeah, that's all I got to say on the subject, glass ceilings.
Well, we want to hear your opinions on it. What glass ceilings are you hiding under? What ones have you broken through? How do you see the glass ceiling in your life, and how has it affected your career trajectory or your life trajectory? What does that look like in your life? So let us know. Reach out to us. We will have all sorts of conversations on this subject and any subject, quite frankly. So if you have something to say about glass ceilings, let's hear it.
Absolutely. Share this with people in your network who could use a little bit of nudge on their own glass ceilings as well, or that you want to open up this dialogue with. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And until next time,
get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.